Hey there, fellow horse lovers. Welcome back to the Daily Ride podcast. I am very excited to share with you a special guest who I met because of my puppy, Juniper. Today's episode isn't exactly horse related, but it is positive reinforcement related, and it has everything to do with the approach to training, the mindset involved with positive reinforcement, and the bigger implications rather than just teaching or training a specific behavior with any given animal, whether it be a dog, a horse, a cat. And so I'm really excited to share this conversation with you. I got to chat with Brian from House of Dog. For those who may just be tuning in to the Daily Ride, Juniper is my 6-month-old blue heeler puppy, and she has gone through her puppy kindergarten class. So her basic obedience as a puppy class, basic puppy socialization, and we're looking forward to taking other classes from House of Dog in the future, such as Fungility, what she is currently signed up for, and her continuing obedience classes with Advanced Puppy K, and so on and so forth as she continues to grow. We sought out House of Dog training specifically because it was positive reinforcement. And because of my exposure to positive reinforcement with my horsemanship, I'm learning how important it is not just that you train your dog, but how you train your dog. And positive reinforcement, as you will hear Brian explain far better than I can, has implications of not just teaching your dog what to do, but how to see the world and how to feel about the world that they're engaging in. And I'm so thrilled that Brian agreed to come on the Daily Ride podcast and talk about his experience as a dog trainer and specifically his expertise with positive reinforcement. Just like in the horse world, the dog world historically has been built off of training based on an alpha or an authoritative type paradigm where our horses are looking for leadership, they're looking for commands. The dog training world has seemed to have evolved from a similar place. So I was really excited when Brian agreed to come on the Daily Ride and share his expertise with positive reinforcement, what led him to positive reinforcement, and how that impacts himself as a trainer, his relationships, his family, and most importantly, the animals that he trains and works with. This is part one of a 2-part interview. Be sure to tune in next week for part 2 to catch the tail end of our conversation. As always, the Daily Ride podcast supports True Heart Healing. True Heart Healing is my nonprofit foundation that I am training my horse, True Heart, to support me with. Our mission is to leverage the healing power of equine partnership and the joy of equine companionship to support and empower children with disabilities or life-altering illnesses, service members, veterans, and their families to build stabilizing relationships, facilitate learning and personal growth, find hope, and discover purpose. If this sounds like a cause that you would like to support and get behind, please head on over to www.the-daily-ride.com to check us out and make a donation. True Heart and I greatly appreciate your support. Thanks for joining us on the Daily Ride podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Can you maybe start by telling us how you got into dog training and specifically what drew you to positive reinforcement?
Well, when I started dog training, I didn't start in positive reinforcement. I actually started with a lot of the compulsion training, like the pinch collars and the choke chains. And then over probably, I don't know, I'd say a few years, I started to kind of see the associations that dogs were making with the world weren't the associations that I wanted the dogs to make. So I started researching on my own because all the trainers that I worked under, all they did was the compulsion training. And there was actually one specific incident where I had a hound dog who the kennel that I worked at, I'd put him in a kennel and he would bark and bark and bark and bark, and I didn't know how to deal with it. So the trainer at the time, he was like, well, let's put a shock collar on him. So we put the bark collar on him, and then he starts barking, and he got so worked up that he physically couldn't stop himself from barking, and he would whine through the shock. And after that, I was like, there's got to be a better way to do this. So I started researching more on my own, started getting more into the positive reinforcement, and then started thinking it's not just about changing the behavior, but changing the emotional reaction as a whole. And then you kind of get more into the behavior side of it. instead of just, he's doing something wrong, punish him. He's doing something wrong, punish him.
Yeah, I that would probably make me cry having to witness something like
It was
that.
hard, but I mean, it was a little traumatizing for me and him. But ever since then, I've been, leaning all in on positive reinforcement.
Right, yeah, and you want your dog to be happy to see you coming and
Hmm.
interact with you rather than terrified.
Uh-huh.
Where do you think the basis of compulsion training is?
Well, a lot of it boils down to the whole alpha theory. Um, and the alpha theory is you have to be the dominant one, you have to be the alpha, you have to be the leader of the pack. And a lot of that dominant theory, alpha theory comes with the pinch collars and the choke chains and things like alpha rolls and showing your dominance. And it's kind of not fair to take, the personality of an entire species and boil it down to just dominance. So that's kind of where a lot of that comes from.
Do you think you mentioned personality, do you think dogs are individuals in their own right, just like humans are?
Oh, 100%. I have a saying there's a really big difference between changing behavior and changing personality. Behavior is a lot easier to change. Personality, the only thing that I've ever seen that can change personality are going to be trauma and puberty. Other than that, the personality you have is the personality you have.
Mhm. Versus you define behavior as the outward expression of your personality?
Well, I mean, behavior and personality can go hand in hand, but getting a fearful dog to never be fearful again is one thing, but getting a fearful dog not to react to the things they're afraid of is something different. Does that make
You're
sense?
trying to change the behavior, not their feelings about it.
So the feelings are you want to change the emotional reaction as a whole. Because let's say we're using fear. So if let's say my dog is afraid of other dogs and I bring other dogs around, I want to use the classical conditioning to start to change that association from something bad's going to happen to something wonderful is going to happen. But then you also get into freedom to choose because fear can be a complicated emotion. And that's where we go back to dominance too. My dog is reacting to another dog, and the only thing I can say is when my dog is trying to dominate that other dog, well, then we take the fear, we can take the trauma, we can take the entire history out of that dog, and we're just ignoring it. And that's kind of unfair to the animal.
Right. Yeah, because it's actually a combination of all those things that's resulted in the
Hmm.
behavior. You mentioned classical conditioning.
Hmm.
For our listeners, walk us through what classical conditioning is.
So, in a nutshell, basically, it's just learning through association. Whatever as a dog or animal associates with a certain person, place, or thing is going to determine how that animal reacts to that person, place, or thing. So you see it at the vet when dogs go into the vet and they put on the brakes. It's because they know they're going to get poked and prodded and examined. And when people come into my facility for daycare and they ask, how does my dog enjoy the place? One of the first things I say is, well, how do they act when you bring them through the door? That's the association. Are we a place to be scared of? Are we a place that we enjoy? So those associations are going to determine how your dog reacts to just everyday things. So the learning through association is the classical conditioning.
So, say your dog or you have a dog that's afraid of coming to daycare. How do you work
Mhm.
with that fear to sort of relearn instead of being afraid of going to daycare? How do you teach them to look forward to it because you want them to have a positive association?
Slowly, very, very slowly. And anytime you're dealing with fear or anxiety, freedom to choose is really big.
Mm,
So if I have a dog that comes into my lobby and they don't want to come into the lobby, we'll spend time in the parking lot. And there's times I've had people just come to the parking lot, give treats in the parking lot, play some tennis ball in the parking lot, and then leave. And once that association starts to change, then we can see if they want to take it further. So when people come to House of Dog Training for daycare, the first thing we do is a meet and greet. Come in, get to know the place, walk around, get treats, meet people, meet dogs, and then leave with the owner so that next time they come back, it's like, oh, I remember this place. This place was awesome. I got treats, I met people, I met dogs. And sometimes you take it a little slower. I've done up to 7 meet and greets with one dog before just to acclimate them. And also, very important, there are other times where you just say, this isn't a right fit for your dog. I mean, because environment is very important. What we don't want is we don't want a dog that can't get used to us and is just sitting in the kennel shaking for hours.
How do you come to realize the difference between he just needs to take smaller steps and he needs more time versus this is not a good fit?
So the first step is experience, honestly, just doing it over and over, learning to read the dog, learning what to look for, learning the signs, the body language. And then other times, sometimes you just don't know until you try. I mean, you bring them in and you say, okay, we didn't do good this time. let's try again. And we actually have a policy at House of Dog Training. If you've come for your fourth meet and greet and we see absolutely no change in the temperament whatsoever, then it might be time to say this isn't a good fit for your dog.
Interesting. So I see a lot of hope in just talking through this process with you, and
Yeah.
that you might start with the dog where it feels hopeless, like they freak out when they say the word daycare or they see the building. But there's hope in just that slow introduction and getting creative about turning it into a more fun, enjoyable experience for them.
Yeah, you find whatever the dog loves. Sometimes it's food, sometimes it's social interaction, sometimes it's toys, and we try to pair that with what it is we're doing or where we're trying to get the dog to go. At the veterinarian, with my dog, Ruby, before we commit to a veterinarian, we do lots of visits. We'll go in, we'll get treats, we'll meet the staff, we'll have the staff give her treats, and then we leave. Do that a few times, and when it's finally time to go in for that examination, she's pulling me through the door.
Let's take a quick pause from today's episode to talk about the obvious for us horse owners in the winter months. Working with horses means putting your hands through a lot between holding the reins, fixing fences, mucking stalls, and just cold mornings at the barn. I've gone through a lot more gloves than I can count, and I'm really picky. It's hard to find a pair that I really love and can keep up. But recently, I think I found one, and they're called Bare Knuckles. Now, these aren't your average work gloves. They're made with a patented double wedge, pre curved design that fits the natural curve of your fingers, so you get less hand fatigue and more grip strength. And this means you can go muck stalls, swing a hammer, or ride all day without that stiff, cramping feeling that most gloves will give you. The premium leather is tough enough for the hardest jobs, but soft enough that you can still handle delicate tack or your tools. Plus, they're warm too. Their insulated pair is perfect for cold weather chores or trail rides. And honestly, once you put them on, you too will understand why they're called the best leather gloves ever made. Here's the best part: Bare Knuckles is partnering with the Daily Ride podcast to give you 15% off your purchase when you use the code The Daily Ride at checkout. Even better, 15% of your purchase using The Daily Ride at checkout will go directly to support True Heart Healing, my nonprofit. So, if you've been meaning to upgrade your gloves, or if you need a great gift for someone else who works hard with their hands, go to buybareknuckles.com. That's BUYBEARKNUCKLES.com. Use the code The Daily Ride, no spaces. That's 15% off for you and 15% off donated to True Heart Healing. It's rare to find gear that works as hard as you do and supports a good cause. So next time you're saddling up or heading to work and think you need a good pair of gloves, think about Bare Knuckles and give your hands a little comfort for all that they do for you. What is Ruby's story? What kind of dog is she, and where did you get her?
So Ruby is right now a 9-year-old German Shepherd. I got her when she was a year. I got her from a client who was a little elderly and couldn't handle the energy of a young German Shepherd. And then, yeah, I've had her for 8 years. She's used to be extremely reactive, and now she's my semi-retired demo dog.
That's amazing. Demo being
A lot of times we'll do shows, like we'll go up on stage and just, run through the paces, the sits, the downs, the stays, the heel, the mat work and stuff like that.
okay, so she's got all the buttons.
Yes, well, all the appropriate buttons for what we need.
That's amazing. And you say a lot of this, like that judgment call of this isn't a good fit versus they just need more time or a different kind of reinforcement,
Mhm.
comes from experience. How long have you been doing this?
Oh God, so my start into the dog world it started before the Department of Agriculture stepped in, and the Department of Agriculture said there's one person per 15 dogs. At House of Dog Training, we do less than that. But before the Department of Agriculture stepped in, when I started, I was in a group of probably between 40 and 80 dogs by myself for
Oh my gosh.
4 to 6 hours. But again, this is 20 some years ago, and things have improved since then. But that's where I got my start, was literally just standing in huge groups of dogs, monitoring play groups, monitoring body language. And so, yeah, that kind of got thrown into the deep end.
That sounds like an ER visit waiting to happen.
And that's one of the reasons we don't do it like that anymore, is because like I said, the Department of Agriculture said there's supposed to be one person per 15 dogs. That's even still a lot.
It is. Yeah. I'm thinking about like our puppy class and the yappy hours that we take Juniper
Hmm.
to, and even 5 or 6 dogs
It
feels
can be
like
a
a
lot.
crowd.
There's times there'll be like those, you just like you said, 5 or 6 dogs, and by the end of the class, I feel like I got my steps in just chasing around trying to monitor them.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Did you know that you always wanted to do this?
No, honestly, I got a job at a kennel and the trainer at the time needed help. So I stepped in to help. I kind of fell in love with it. Turned out I had a knack for it. And here I am 22 years later.
That's amazing. Was it the emotional connection with the animals or
I think the emotional connection is all, I mean, we love dogs. Everybody loves dogs. Most people have that emotional connection with dogs. But when I really started studying on my own and not just going off what the other trainers were saying, when I got into the behavioral therapy part of it and the changing the emotional reactions, that's what really grabbed me. And a lot of times when you get those pet dog trainers, those behavior people, it's that initial, like that one book you read or that one seminar you take that just clicks that interest in the behavior and you just keep going and going and going.
do you remember what that one thing was for you?
Well, honestly, it started with that shock collar experience with Nelson, and then after that, I started studying. So actually, the first book I read on positive reinforcement, it was, I think it's called Behavior Problems in Dogs. And as I'm reading it, all it is just a bunch of case studies of a guy. I think his name was William Campbell, who wrote the book. It's just a bunch of case studies of him changing behavior, and the way he changed behavior was through routine change, diet change, classical conditioning. And after I read that book, like, oh, there is another way to do it. And then after that, it was actually The Complete Idiot's Guide to Positive Dog Training. I recommend that book
Oh,
for anybody that's trying to get into behavior, and it gives you just a really good understanding of that classical and operant conditioning.
yeah. This reminds me, I was chatting with one of my positive reinforcement horse training
Mhm.
mentors last week. She just got a Guinness World Record with her horse for most tricks performed in 3 minutes. And I think it averaged out to over 11 tricks a minute with this horse. Which is amazing thinking how they have to, like, move around and perform tricks with a time constraint, so they're just
Yeah,
rattling them off, and I'm like,
yeah,
That's a lot of tricks. How do you keep this all straight?" And she's like, "Well, it all boils down to 3 basic skills, right? Like, pick something up with your mouth, push something around with your nose, or target some part of your body." And I'm
yeah,
like,
okay.
"Huh, okay." I guess it all kind of boils down to the same kind of tenets with dog training, or at least there's one universal thing with positive reinforcement is you kind of ignore the behaviors you don't, and you reward the heck out of the behaviors that you do want.
Yeah, but now with ignoring the behaviors you don't want, another important step of that is managing the environment so that the dog is not able to perform the behaviors that you don't want. Because
Mm,
environment has a lot to do with it too. Because if you try to manage a certain behavior, but the environment is set up for that animal to practice the behavior over and over and over again, you're going to be fighting a really hard uphill battle.
right. And that's also a similarity to horse training. There's this old adage where it's like make the wrong thing hard and the right thing
Mhm.
easy.
Yeah, and then reward that right thing and just watch that behavior start to gravitate toward in the direction you want it to.
But I love how you kind of shift the ownership from that statement into, the trainer, where it's like your responsibility to manage the environment to set your animal up for success.
Yeah, you have to know what behavior you have, what behavior you want, and then how to get there. And the environment is a huge part of it.
I'd love to ask you more about that. What are some common environmental mistakes you see people make?
So I guess that would depend on the behavior. When let's take introducing two new dogs. A lot of times when they do the introduction, they'll just take a new dog and put them right into the environment of the dog that's lived there for a while. That can be like an environmental disaster sometimes.
Mm,
If I'm working with reactivity and I want to teach my dog not to react to other dogs, I'm not going to walk into the dog park to work on it. I might work at a distance or have people set up the environment so that I know exactly where the other dogs are going to be, and then I can control that threshold accordingly.
mm,
Yeah. So
okay.
every living organism from the beginning of time up until now, their behavior has been directly affected by the environment. There's no way around that. Environment, especially when you're getting into behavior modification, the environment is one of the first things you look at because if you want to change a behavior, the first step is management of that behavior so that they can't continue to practice it over and over and over again and it doesn't turn into what we call a self-reinforcing behavior.
What is a self reinforcing behavior?
Just anything that reinforces itself. Like let's take a reactivity. So if my dog is reacting out of fear to another dog, so another dog comes up, my dog reacts, that dog goes away. My dog learned that that reaction created the space that she wanted, so it reinforces the behavior and just kind of perpetuates it further and further every time it happens.
Okay, I see. This has happened in the past. Juniper is our 4th cattle dog. Cattle dog number 3 lived to the age of 16, and she trained my mom. Every time the phone would ring, she would bark, and mom would give her a cookie because it's hard to bark when you're chewing on something.
Everybody wants a smart dog until they get a smart dog.
Yes, that was reinforcing. Who would you say have been your biggest mentors in developing your skill and experience as a positive reinforcement trainer after you had this aha moment?
Well, so when I had the aha moment, I didn't have a lot of other positive reinforcement trainers around me to kind of push me in that direction. I kind of went off on that on my own. So my very first mentors, I would say, would be authors. So like Patricia McConnell, she was awesome. All of her books are great. Ray Coppinger, he's an ecologist, and he doesn't really have like sit down, stay type dog training books, but there's a book that he wrote called Dogs. It's just if you want to know why your dog is a dog, read the book called Dogs by Ray Coppinger. But then it also goes through phases. Like there was a time where I was literally reading, just reading and reading and reading and reading. But then finally, I actually had a positive reinforcement trainer named Angie Neal come and kind of fill in a lot of the gaps for me. So I would credit a lot of what I am able to do to a lot of what she taught me because, like I said, she helped me fill in the gaps between the positive reinforcement and the compulsion training.
Is this the Angie that also teaches at House of Dog?
Yep, that's her. I've known her for probably, God, a decade and a half, probably.
Cool. I love her.
Yeah, she's
She,
awesome.
she's really good with Juniper too.
Yeah, she's great. She taught me a lot of what I know about what we do today, especially in the basic obedience classes.
So, what do you teach now?
Well, I do the puppy classes, which you know, because you took through Juniper through one of them. I also teach a recall class that I have, and then I do a lot of behavioral therapy through privates.
Okay. Behavioral therapy, meaning you meet with people one on one and work on problem behaviors?
Yep. So whatever they're having, usually what I tell people is make me a list. Make me two lists: things I want my dog to do, things I want my dog to stop doing, and then we just kind of prioritize and go down the list.
Interesting. What is your favorite thing to teach? Do you like those one on ones? Do you enjoy the classes? Is it the
I do like the
variety?
one-on-ones. The one-on-ones are good, but I think my favorite would probably be the recall class, just come when called, because a good recall doesn't just get your dog to come back to you. A good recall will get your dog to pay attention to you. And if you don't have your dog's attention, you're not going to get anything else. So teaching that name recognition and that recall and teaching your dog to pick up their head and look at you when they hear their name is probably one of my favorite skills because as soon as you get that, a lot of the other things can fall right into place.
Yeah, it's easier to teach because you have their attention.
And like I said, if you don't have their attention, you're probably not going to get much else.
Interesting. And just a wild guess, boiling the title of that class, Come When Called, down to a TLDR byline, you create a positive association with that dog's name?
Yeah, well, so in the class, I teach three things. It's just recall or name recognition, recall, and then emergency recall. And those are the only things we go over in 6 weeks.
Very cool. And we kind of got a taste of that in our puppy class.
Yes, yes, yep. With the find and come
Wonderful.
here game, it's usually where we start everybody.
Yeah. And the emergency stop, super handy. Juniper
Yeah,
loves that,
everybody.
although she's added a stop to stop and look at the ground.
Yeah, it's a fun behavior to watch and it's fun to teach too.
Do you find they typically add their own flair to tricks? They start adding their own twists on things?
Oh yeah, dogs are experts at figuring out how to get what they want and watching you try to teach something, but then they also start throwing out everything else they know to get you to give them the treat. Then those things kind of start meshing together. So you can get a rollover that turns into a rollover, and then a get up, and so yeah, it's pretty fun to watch stuff like that. They all do have their own little twist on things.
What is the most ridiculous thing you've seen?
Okay, so my dog, I had a hound dog when I first started training, and he likes to get into the garbage. So, like I said earlier, management of a behavior is the first step. So, to manage the behavior, I just took the garbage can and I put it up on the counter, and then we left. And when I came home, turns out he could still reach it. So he'd get his paws up and then knock it over. So that what I did is I took the garbage can and I put it way in the back so that he couldn't reach it, but then he learned to jump up on the counter all four paws and knock the trash can over. But inadvertently, while he was up there, he also sniffed the microwave, learned how to push the button and open it, and he would lick the inside of it. So I had 100-pound hound dogs that would jump up onto the counter, all four paws, open the microwave, and lick it.
So you just lived without a microwave.
Yeah, for about 7 years.
My God.
The management. How do you get to the dog to stop licking the? The microwave, yeah, get rid of the microwave.
That's awesome. But I mean, technically, your hound dog was doing exactly what he was bred to do, right? He
Following
was,
his nose.
yes, exactly, and
Mhm.
pursuing the prize, which happened to be in the microwave, and he figured out how to open it. So, talk about breed behaviors. He was an excellent example of that kind of behavior that he was bred to do. We're going to take a quick break from this week's episode to talk about one of the Daily Ride podcast sponsors. So, you all know that I spend a lot of time around horses, which means when I get home, I want to get comfy and I want to get cozy, and I really need some good rest. And that's why I've been obsessed with my Cozy Earth sheets. And when I saw that Cozy Earth was a company that was willing to partner with the Daily Ride podcast, I squealed because I have been obsessed with the Cozy Earth pajamas that I have for months. So, I'm super excited to tell you about Cozy Earth and share an exclusive discount code with you. Their products are made from bamboo, so not only are they incredibly soft, like buttery soft, but they actually keep Tom and I pretty cool at night. We don't wake up sweaty anymore, just cool, dry, comfortable sleep, and they're very lightweight and durable. And listen, I'm not the only one who loves these sheets. Oprah has had Cozy Earth on her favorite things list 7 years in a row, and Kris Jenner swears by them too. They've even been called the world's softest sheets on The Talk, and honestly, I would have to agree. They also have the coziest bamboo pajama sets. I think I have 5 of them, and they are the perfect mix of elegant looking and also super comfy, stretchy, breathable. Basically, the kind of pajamas that you don't mind being seen in and don't want to take off. Cozy Earth has thousands of 5-star reviews, free shipping on orders over $50, and even a 100-night sleep trial so you can see for yourself. Plus, they back all of this with a 10-year warranty. So here's the exciting deal. I got the very best discount that they will offer, which is 41% off when you use my code TheDailyRide at CozyEarth.com. 41% off the entire website. If you forget, just double check the link in the show notes down below. It will take you straight there. And it gets better. I earn a commission every time you use my code, so you are donating to True Heart Healing by shopping at Cozy Earth. It's a win-win. You get their best discount. My commission goes to True Heart Healing, and you get to enjoy the best sheets and pajamas ever. Head on over to www.cozyearth.com and remember to use my code, The Daily Ride, at checkout for 41% off the whole website. Now let's get back into it. How do you kind of structure your training methods based on what you know about breed types?
Well, I guess first you got to know what each breed is capable of. Because if you want to teach a behavior, but your dog is physically incapable of that behavior, you're not gonna get what you want. Um, but like with my German Shepherd, German Shepherds are prone to hip problems, so we didn't do a lot of jumping training. We didn't do a lot of agility or anything like that. Or when you get to the difference, let's say if you have a border collie, you can get those recalls really, 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 really quick, but it's going to be hard for a border collie puppy to sit still. But if you get a Great Pyrenees, they're going to be a lot better at sitting still. So your downstays will be amazing, but your recalls are going to be a lot slower.
Okay, so a lot of it I'm hearing is just managing expectations.
100%. One of the most frustrating parts about dog training is when our expectations are up near the roof, but our dog's capabilities are down near the floor. So you always got to start with what they're capable of and then build on.
How do you kind of, I mean, and I think the other piece of that is not just managing your clients' expectations, but educating them on what is possible. How do you approach that conversation when you have a client that wants a couch potato dog, but brought home a border collie puppy?
Well, sometimes it involves a serious talk. Sometimes there are like that managing expectations is one of the harder parts of my job. There have been times where I'd have to say, okay, your dog just isn't going to be capable of this, or you're not capable of managing this situation. So it kind of goes on a case by case basis.
Mm,
But no, like
interesting.
I said, knowing the physical limitations, knowing the mental limitations, like having people say, I get people all the time say, I just got this dog from the Humane Society. He's reactive. He's 6 years old. I want to turn him into my service dog. Well, I need to manage that expectation because the chances of that happening are really close to zero. So
Mm-hmm.
I have to step in and say, well, there's a history here. We may have some fear. We may have some reactivity. And if we can't get this dog to the point where it can go to public places, which it may not be mentally capable of, then you can't turn this into a service dog. If I would feel like I was ripping someone off if I let them think that something was possible that wasn't possible.
Yeah. Interesting. Is that one of the more common problems you see, the reactivity and shelter dog expectations?
Yeah, fear-based reactivity is a really big one. Fear-based reactivity, and sometimes you get what's called a frustrated greeter. But yeah, I see more reactivity than anything else.
Interesting. And I would imagine that is pretty prevalent with shelter rescues, just because that in itself can be rather emotionally traumatic being brought to a shelter.
Yeah, a lot of times you'll get the dogs that were found on the street can be pretty reactive because, I mean, we put them on a leash and they've been used to being off leash and doing what they want and being able to create space between them and a scary thing whenever they want to. But then we put them on leash. They don't feel like they can make that space anymore. And dogs have a fight or flight reflex just like we do. And if they feel confined, that flight reflex can switch over to a fight reflex real quick because the dog just doesn't feel like they have any other option.
I mean, yeah, that makes complete logical sense.
Yeah, and again, you can see that a lot in the rescue dogs. So, like I said, they're used to being able to go wherever they want. They see something scary, they just go off in the opposite direction. But all of a sudden, we have them on leash, and we're continually walking towards that scary thing, and they just start to react because that fight is the only way that they know to try to keep that thing at a distance.
When you have a scary thing that your dog has alerted to, and
Mhm.
Juniper has no fear, but she has alerted about things. She's expressed concern.
Yeah.
I remember from puppy class, you said the worst thing you can do is force your dog to walk up to it. What should you do instead?
So that would kind of go on a case by case basis because when you have fear, it's usually one of three causes. Sometimes it's just lack of exposure. You know, if they're not exposed as a puppy, things can be scary as they get older. Trauma, and the thing to keep in mind about trauma is trauma doesn't go away. So if our dogs or animals just went through something traumatic, they're going to be dealing with that for their entire life. And the third is genetics. If mom and dad were a little shy and standoffish, it kind of makes sense that some of the puppies would be too. But anytime you're introducing something scary, you always want to start slow. It depends on what the dog can handle. You want to find what we call the threshold. And the threshold is how close can we get to a scary thing with our dog still feeling comfortable. And then we find that threshold and then we play with that threshold a little bit instead of just pushing them over and flooding the dog into a situation that they can't handle
Interesting. And I know that term from personal therapy. Flooding is when your nervous system is forced into that fight or flight response.
by overwhelming it.
Right. And so, and you're not able to make rational, conscious choices at that point because your brain is going, we're going to die.
Yeah, once anxiety reaches a certain level, learning stops. The only thing an animal can be capable of learning is how to get out of that situation once it reaches a certain level, and there's no way around that.
Mm-hmm. So with horses, I'm asking about the scary thing because they're 1,000-pound prey animals and everything is potentially horse eating, right? So
Yeah.
the best way that I've dealt with this with my little mare is pointing her at the scary thing and asking her to touch, usually showing her that I can touch it. And at this point, we've done this for the last 3 years. She's learned that if she inches towards it, even if she takes her time, she'll get a cookie. So we've kind of turned exploring into more of a game. There is a nuance there in understanding, can you play with that threshold? Are you willing to be curious? Are you willing to take one more step and consider touching the thing?
hmm
Or are you just so freaked out that we need to like take a breath and reset?
And that goes on a case by case basis. Like I
Mhm.
usually don't recommend food luring over to scary things because I've actually seen dogs become distrustful of owners luring them. So anytime the owner offers a treat, the dog says, "Well, last time they did this, you were luring me over to a scary thing, so I don't even want that treat anymore."
It ruins the treats.
So, and it can also ruin your recall. So if I say, "Come here, come on, it's okay, come on over here," and then they come and they listen to the recall, but that recall is paired with that scary thing, it can ruin your recall. I think what you said is taking your time is the biggest thing, and also freedom to choose. Give them that
Yes.
opportunity to make the space if they want to. So, like when we do our meet and greets at House of Dog Training, we start in the lobby, we take the leash off, we let them explore, and before we open the door to go to the back, one of the first things I say is, we're following your dog. So if your dog doesn't want to go in the back, we're not going to force them. Or if they go into the back and they hear a dog bark and then run right back out to the lobby, we follow them right back out to the lobby. So the more freedom that they have to choose, the easier it's going to be for them to say, okay, it's not as bad as I thought. Or you'll see them walk in and test the waters and then run away, and then walk in and test the waters. And as they keep that process going, they start to learn, well, it's not as scary as I thought. It's not as scary as I thought, until eventually they just become desensitized to it.
Interesting. Why do you think that freedom to choose matters so much?
Well, you got to. I mean, if you're not empowered to make your own decision, it's going to ruin your confidence. The more empowered you are to make your own decision, to run your own life, to do what it is you feel is necessary to protect yourself, the more confidence you're going to build. So it's okay to be afraid of it. It's okay to walk in and sniff around. And then with each repetition, they start to learn, well, nothing hurt me. Okay, well, this time nothing hurt me. And I go in a little, I mean, kind of sometimes you let their curiosities take over. But again, there are those other times where there are dogs, they won't even come to the bill. Like I've had dogs walk in, they just lose their bowels right away. And it's like right away, it's like, okay, this isn't the right fit for your dog. There's a lot of things we need to do in order to get your dog used to this situation if we even decide to go that far.
It's interesting that idea of freedom to choose and the importance of building confidence kind of flies directly in the face of the whole compulsion dominance
Mhm.
training that you
Mhm.
started at.
Yep. It's almost a complete opposite. What I tell people is the purpose of dog training isn't to control your dog's behavior. The purpose of dog training is to get your dog to be able to control their own behavior. And the more that they
Mm.
can control their own behavior, the more well adjusted they're going to be, the easier your life is going to be in general. I promise you, if you spend your animal's entire life trying to control their behavior, you're going to end up frustrated. They're going to end up frustrated and maybe even a little bit resentful.
Listening to you speak about this makes me think about our definition of leadership, human to human leadership. Are you familiar with Simon Sinek?
No.
He wrote a book called Start with Why. Leaders Eat Last. He talks a lot about modern leadership in the workplace, and his whole thing is like actually to be a good leader, it's not about being in charge. It's about taking care of those in your charge and empowering them to be able to lead themselves, and then you get out of their way.
Yeah, yeah, that's a beautiful description. But the same and right, with the dogs, you give them the power to make those good decisions, and then you let them make those good decisions and watch their confidence and their happiness and everything just shoot through the roof.
And then they choose to ask you what they should do next.
Hmm. Yeah, and then so yeah, and the more you reinforce those good decisions, the more of those good decisions you see.
Yeah. Yeah. Choice to listen to you.
So like with let's say like one of the things I have people reinforce all the time are check-ins. So
Mm.
every time your dog turns and looks at you, mark it and reinforce it. And you're going to start to see more of that as your dog, especially if you start as a puppy, you're going to start to see more of that as your dog gets older. So you're teaching your dog, focusing on you is one of the most reinforcing things. So as they grow older, you have to ask for it less and less because they just start gravitating towards you more because that's just a good decision on their part. And it's just a decision that's been reinforced over and over and over. And the more they do it themselves, the less you got to ask for.
Mhm. So you mentioned if you start this as a puppy, how do you kind of adjust your training and your expectations and your approach based on life stages? I went through your puppy class. I thought it was really comprehensive and probably applicable throughout my dog's lifespan. But how would you kind of change that approach for older dogs?
Well, actually, so right now I've got like I said, my dog Ruby, she's 9 years old, and I am taking her through one of Angie's classes, which is a PKA, which is it's the class for after puppies. So it's dogs between 6 months and a year. So the two dogs that are in the class are between 6 months and a year, and my dog is 9. So all the other dogs are running around and they're doing heel work and recalls. And Ruby's doing good, but about halfway through the class, we had to take a break. We had to go off to the side, lay down, relax, let her kind of catch her breath, and then jump back in probably about 20 minutes later. So physical limitations have a lot to do with it. Health, making sure there's no like arthritis or anything that stops your dog from physically being able to do things. Size of dog has a lot to do. Like even with when you have puppies, when you have those bigger breeds of puppies, if you're doing a lot of sit and down and sit and down and sit and down, and you notice that they're having trouble with it, most puppies, like your bigger breeds, grow faster than any other animal on the planet. So if your dog is 6, 7, 8, 9 months old and you notice they're having trouble sitting down, they may be going through growing pains. So we stop that for a little bit just to make it more comfortable because we don't want the negative associations with the sit, and we don't want our dog to learn to blow us off, and we also don't want our dog to be in pain as we're asking him to go through training.
So you really have to be very attentive to your dog, their emotional state, and understand their signals.
Yeah, but I mean, as you get to know your dog and as you start to pick stuff out, a lot of times it just becomes second nature. Nobody knows a dog better than the owner, and a lot of people are actually more in tune to their dog than they think they are.
That was a big anxiety with me when I brought my horse home. She's a little sassy, and I was so concerned that I would not correctly be able to tell the difference between her sassing me and her saying ouch.
Mm.
because a lot of time that behavior looks similar, right? Like they don't have verbal language like we do. And so an animal saying ouch can also look like an animal saying no, screw you.
Yeah, and then also, I mean, if we're getting, I don't know how it is with horses, but with dogs, dogs typically don't show pain the same
Mhm.
way people or sometimes other animals because do you know what predatory drift is? One animal showing a sign of weakness and then all the other animals trying to jump on top of it. And dogs know that this is happening, so there's a lot of times dogs will be in pain, but because of that predatory drift, they won't show it.
Interesting. But yeah, they're very stoic, and so something
Mhm.
might be hurting for a long time, and then
Mhm.
eventually it hits that point where it's too bad and they can't mask it anymore.
And I've actually seen dogs that could not be social with other dogs. An owner brings them in, I watch them walk around, notice a little bit of a limp. We go to the vet, turns out the dog has arthritis or something, get the dog on some pain medications, then next thing we know, we're able to play with other dogs again.
Hmm. Okay. Interesting. It's interesting that shows up in social situations, but I guess it makes sense. Like when my stomach is upset, I don't feel like going to happy hour.
That's very true. When I'm sick, I don't want to leave the house.
Right. What are the easiest skills you find to teach with positive reinforcement?
Uh, Honestly, probably name recognition. I mean, honestly, if you name recognition is the basics, and it's got to be one of the easiest things, especially if you have a food motivated dog. Literally, all you're doing is asking your dog to turn their head. That's it. So
Mm.
just you say their name, they turn their heads, and you throw them a piece of food. That's one of the easiest things.
What about the hardest?
I wouldn't look at it like the hardest thing to teach with positive reinforcement, more just the hardest thing to teach in general. Overcoming phobias can be really hard, overcoming trauma.
Mm.
Like, I've worked with PTSD, I've worked with phobias, I've worked with obsessive compulsive disorder, and a lot of these things can be really hard to work with depending on the age of the dog, how long the behavior's been going on, the severity of the trauma, if there was trauma. So those things are usually that behavior modification is usually the hardest to work with.
Mm.
But honestly, if I was to say the two hardest behaviors in the world to work with would be interdog aggression and separation anxiety.
Why?
Well, interdog aggression, you get the is just fighting between dogs. And a lot of
Mm.
that takes management. And one of the hardest part about management with that is sometimes you'll just walk into a house and there's just baby gates everywhere because dogs can't even be in the same room together. And that's one of the hardest parts because it takes that constant supervision and that constant manipulating of the space to make sure that the dogs aren't doing it anymore. And then depending on the dogs, some dogs they can learn to get along, some dogs can learn to coexist, and other dogs they just don't like each other and there's nothing you can do about it.
That's heartbreaking for
It
everyone
is.
involved.
Yeah. Yeah, I get a lot of couples that want to move in together and they come to me and say, "Okay, we signed a lease and we need our dogs to get along now." Like, well, this is where my managing expectations comes in because we're not going to do this overnight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So go to Walmart and get a bunch of baby gates and buckle up because it's going to be a while.
Because yeah, you want to move slow, 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 slow. So yeah, and then the
Interesting.
separation anxiety is hard too because it takes again that constant monitoring. Because if you have a dog that you literally cannot leave by themselves, it's physically and emotionally exhausting. Just
Mm.
working through the training can be really hard.
Yeah. That would be heartbreaking for me too. I'm a bit of a softie.
The severity of the separation anxiety and the severity of the interdog aggression can be that hard part too. Because if I've read case studies of dogs jumping through second story windows and hurting themselves because when you get to the point where the behavior is physically unsafe for the dog, that's when it starts to get really hard, especially when you need to manage your environment in order to control it,
Mm. Yeah. And they could hurt themselves, hurt others, property damage.
which I've seen all of with both separation anxiety and interdog aggression.
Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Daily Ride podcast with Brian from House of Dog Training. If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure you like, subscribe, and leave a review on this podcast. And stay tuned for next week's episode, which is the second part of this interview. For more information on positive reinforcement based dog training and to check out the rest of the services that House of Dog has to offer, head to www.houseofdogtraining.com. Thank you so much for being here. And until next time, enjoy the ride.